I think that the most interesting one is the worker proposals, just because there's so much opportunity there. It's going to be such a large fund. I think that that's where we're going to see so much of the growth, the strength is going to come from the ecosystem. And the one that scares me the most is arbitration, because there's just so much potential for misunderstanding, and we're just not there yet right now, in my opinion. I think what's going on right now is a lot of this. What we see in EOS is a chain that's incredibly powerful. So even if we remove all the governance features right now, we still have something that's incredible without this. So from my point of view, I think what's important with worker proposals, with the Constitution, with arbitration, is really to tone it down, to step it back, really take our time to do this properly. Because as Josh and Kevin said, the Constitution and these other two systems are going to be the base of what we're going to see in the future. And to get it right the first time around, we really don't have the luxury to mess this up. And so I think we really need to slow down to define and to develop a roadmap as to where we want to go with this. So for worker proposals specifically, I think we need, what is the intent of this? Where's the money going to go? How would you apply? Are there any I guess, set rules or what kind of programs or what kind of things do we want to fund with this? I think we need to take a step back and really think about that. So I echo both sentiments. I think that's the idea. So originally, Josh, you were saying, or earlier you were saying that arbitration has existed. And Thomas, you say this all the time. Arbitration has existed now for such a long time. Arbitration is not the issue. So sure, some people might not understand how arbitration works, but right now I think where the bottleneck is, or where there's an issue in the community, is not how arbitration works, is where it starts on this particular chain. Where are the parameters that we're working in? And that's exactly what Kevin's saying. If we in the future get into a smart contract together, then we would appoint arbitrators. We self-appointed those arbitrators. We've entered in that in a business relationship. Whereas right now what we're seeing on chain, we're automatically assuming that, and yeah, it is in the Constitution, so I think that's part of the issue, but we're assuming that people have entered into this contract because they're token holders, and it's accurate in the sense that it is written in the Constitution, and you've got, you signed it and everything, but it wasn't voluntary per se, and it is creating a bottleneck for ECAF, and that's what's creating the most amount of issues, I think, externally as well. So people looking from the outside looking in, the sense that we get for EOS Nation anyways, from what we're hearing from the community, people are incredibly scared about how this comes about and how this centralization of power, in a sense, is able to then make rulings, even though they might be opinions. The block producers are put in a position to either act or not act. If they don't act, then there's a perception. If they do act, there's a perception. And this right now is just, it's in its infancy stage, and that's not the arbitration itself. That's where arbitration starts on the chain and where that jurisdiction lies for current arbitration. And it goes back to the Constitution. I think that's where, like you said, we need to work on that base layer from the beginning to define that. And I think we're not ready yet right now to make those. The comment that echoed with me is the being very impatient and being very reactionary. I think what we're seeing right now, we really need to take it to a higher level and slow I keep saying we need to slow things down, because I think what we're seeing right now is everything's an emergency. Everything's the new flavor of the day, and then we react to that right away. Like we need the solution right now. I think we really need to define what our roadmap is, what is important for EOS, where we want to go, so that when there are other things that come about, we're able to stay focused and keep going in the direction that we think is really good. And I think that'll differ from block producer to block producer. But right now, because we're so new to this, and we're still in our infancy stages, like you said, 35 days. Right now, it feels like everything is reactionary, and nothing is proactive, and I don't feel right now like there's one direction that people are heading, and they're starting to see some pockets of, okay, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this. I think over time we're going to see more of that.
Where do we establish that? I don't think we could do a singular roadmap anywhere. I mean, every single group in this room and on stage, we all have our own roadmaps, we all have our own priorities. I think the Worker Proposal Fund is one place that could say, we're going to establish a collective group of priorities. So it would be interesting if that could be part of what they do.
Like, first thing I would say, the referendum contract. That should be, in my opinion, right now, this is the largest priority. We don't have a referendum contract, and so I think the referendum contract is the premise to a lot of these things that we're talking about.
Yes.
So we might not have a full roadmap for EOS as a whole, but I think we're going to see pockets of different things that are going to stem, or that are going to stand up and going to be important in the short term. Right now, referendum contract for me is number one. So the one thing that I think would be nice, and it would be nice to ask the community if they think there's value. There's so much good work going on in EOS right now, and we really don't have a body or something to be able to get out that message. Would we want that body? And if so, what would be the responsibility of that body? And what would they be doing, and in order to kind of spread out the good news of what's going on in EOS? Because the block producers right now are just in their own little holes and doing their own little things, and we're always reacting like this. I think we need somebody on the outside that can spread a message.
Somebody with a lower frequency of responsiveness, who aren't being elected every 2 minutes. And
yeah, not every 2 minutes, 6 seconds, yeah.
Otherwise, the responsiveness is falling on the block producers.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And that's not effective long term.
Okay.
It's not, yeah. I think in theory, that's the idea, right? You're supposed to have block producers that are producing the most amount of good for the community. What we were talking about 2 minutes ago was, what about the block producers that are there producing blocks, but not producing good for the community?
And in some cases are collecting vote rewards.
And even more so, exactly.
In violation of the letter and the spirit of reg producer and claim reward.
So I think there's also, right now we were talking, or you were talking about, what can we do on chain, or what could the block producers do effectively, either through arbitration, but then the last part would be through code to be able to remove somebody. I think what we need to look at as well is, what can we do off chain to get those people to become good actors? And I think that there's a lot of I mean, there is work going on in the background to be able to do that. Yes, that seems to be a challenge for some of them, for sure.
Some of the block producers are mysterious entities indeed.
But again, I think it comes back to, I might get hit for saying this, but just because we don't know who they are in 5 seconds after they came on doesn't mean they're bad actors. And just because we know who they are does not mean that they're good actors either.
Right.
So venues like this, where we get to meet people, we get to talk to people, there's so much more that can be achieved in such a short period of time when people get together like this. And I think that this type of event is very powerful for that. And I think that this type of event, if it's done properly, we should be able to see tangible results afterwards in terms of more block producers doing more good, because they get a sense of what the community is looking for. I inherently believe that, just like I think is the 3 premises of EOS that Dan had put out, that most human beings, the vast majority of human beings, inherently want to do good. I echo that as well. I mean, education is really, really important. And I think what's important as well, that we kind of briefly touched upon, I think we need to define, or at least figure out, what is Block 1's role in all of this. I still think we're not too sure what Block 1's role is. I'm not even sure Block 1 knows what Block 1's role is in all this. I think the intent originally was, here's software, community, do. And we've seen Block 1 come back and say, well, actually, community do, but only in this manner. Or community actually not too cool with what you're doing. So that, I think, it should be a focus for sure. Figure out what we want Block 1's role to be.
And ask them to do it, yeah.
And ask them, yeah, because we're the community. So, I mean, Block One, if really the intent was they're creating software and they're handing it over, really hand it over.
Gotcha. And